Right? Picture this. You wake up one morning, flip on the kettle, and suddenly realize that bloke in Brussels you've never voted for now controls whether you can afford to boil water for your tea. Sounds mad, doesn't it? Well, buckle up, because that's precisely the direction Sir Keir Starmer is steering this ship, and Nigel Farage is absolutely livid about it. We're talking about a deal so controversial, so spectacularly tone-deaf, that it's got half of Westminster ready to stage a mutiny. Starmer wants Britain back in the EU's internal electricity market, and the price tag? Only our entire energy independence and target so ambitious they make net zero look like a leisurely Sunday stroll. Listen, quick favor. If you're enjoying this chaos as much as I am, smash that subscribe button right now. Seriously, over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, takes literally 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep bringing you this content. Click that notification bell whilst you're at it. Cheers to those who did. Right, back to this absolute shambles. Now, let me paint you the full picture of what's actually happening here, because this isn't just another boring trade negotiation buried in government documents that nobody reads. This is Starmer and his Energy Secretary Ed Miliband cooking up a scheme that would fundamentally reshape how Britain powers itself, and they are doing it whilst handing the recipe book to Brussels. The Prime Minister is desperately trying to rejoin the EU's internal electricity market, that massive borderless grid connecting all 27 EU countries plus Norway into one giant power-sharing arrangement. Sounds cooperative and lovely, doesn't it? European unity, working together, all that jazz. Except there's a rather massive catch that they conveniently forgot to mention in the sales pitch. Brussels has laid down its terms, and they're about as flexible as a Victorian lamppost. If Britain wants back into this club, we've got to sign up to the EU's renewable energy targets. Not our targets. Not targets we debated in Parliament. Not targets that reflect what British voters actually want or what British businesses can reasonably afford. No, we're talking about Brussels targets, decided by Brussels bureaucrats, enforced by Brussels regulations. And here's where it gets properly mental. These targets will require Britain to nearly double its net zero ambitions. Double them. We're not talking about a slight adjustment or modest increase. We're talking about strapping a rocket to our decarbonization timeline and hoping we don't explode before we reach orbit. The numbers are genuinely staggering when you actually look at them. Brussels is planning to source 42.5% of its energy from renewables by 2030, with aspirations to hit 45%. That's their grand vision. Meanwhile, Britain's current plan target sits at a modest 22%. So we're being asked to nearly double our renewable energy share in roughly 5 years to match a target set by people we specifically voted to stop having power over us. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. We spent years arguing about taking back control, about sovereignty, about making our own decisions, and now we're voluntarily handing the thermostat back to the very people we said cheerio to. But wait, because it gets even better, and by better I obviously mean catastrophically worse. This isn't just some aspirational goal that sounds nice in press releases. The leaked document from the Cabinet Office website, which someone helpfully published for all of us to see, makes it crystal clear that UK energy policy will become subordinate to EU jurisdiction. Read that again. Subordinate, not collaborative, not cooperative. Subordinate. The document actually states that the electricity agreement should set an indicative global target for the share of renewable energy in gross final consumption of energy in the United Kingdom, and to ensure a level playing field. That global target should be comparable to that of the European Union. Level playing field is Brussels speak for you'll do exactly what we tell you. Now, Ed Miliband, bless him, has already set a target for the country's power generation to be 95% decarbonized by 2030. Ambitious doesn't even begin to cover it. That's less than 6 years away. But here's the kicker that makes the whole thing even more bonkers. Electricity only accounts for about 1/5 of total domestic energy consumption. 1/5. So hitting the EU's 4 to 5% renewable target across all energy consumption means we can't just focus on electricity generation. Oh no, that would be far too simple and sensible. Energy experts have been doing the maths, and their conclusions are making people's eyes water. To actually meet these EU targets, Britain would need a massive, unprecedented acceleration in replacing gas boilers with heat pumps. And if you've priced a heat pump recently, you'll know they're about as affordable as a small yacht. We're talking potentially thousands upon thousands of pounds per household. Then there's the small matter of adding biofuels to petrol and diesel, which will absolutely do wonders for fuel prices at the pump. And naturally, we'd need to force significantly more drivers into electric vehicles at a pace that makes the current transition look positively glacial. Never mind that our charging infrastructure can barely cope with current demand, or that electricity prices are already making people choose between heating and eating. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho is absolutely fuming about this, and frankly, she's got every right to be. She's accused Sir Keir of surrendering control of our energy system to bureaucrats in Brussels, and she's not pulling her punches. Her warning is stark and worth paying attention to. UK ministers will be forced to reduce emissions regardless of what it will do to people's energy bills or the competitiveness of our businesses. Let that sink in for a moment. Forced to reduce emissions regardless of the consequences. It doesn't matter if your energy bill doubles. It doesn't matter if British businesses can't compete because they are paying premium prices for energy whilst their competitors in Asia and America aren't. It doesn't matter if pensioners are freezing in winter because they literally cannot afford to heat their homes. The target must be met, consequences be damned. Coutinho went even further, saying that bill payers should be very worried about what the Labour government is signing up to. She described the EU's Renewable Energy Directive as like all the worst parts of the UK Climate Change Act on steroids. And that's coming from someone who actually has to read these directives and understands the implications. This isn't political theatre or opposition parties being dramatic for the cameras. This is genuine alarm from people who've seen the fine print and realize just how catastrophically expensive this could become for ordinary British families and businesses. Now, enter Nigel Farage, stage right, with all the subtlety of a brass band at a library. Farage has called for Starmer to resign over this proposed deal, and whilst many will roll their eyes and mutter typical Farage, his central argument is actually rather difficult to dismiss. His position boils down to this. We voted for Brexit specifically to escape this sort of arrangement. We voted to take back control of our laws, our borders, and yes, our regulatory framework. We voted to stop having unelected bureaucrats in Brussels setting targets and policies that British politicians would then be forced to implement. And now, barely 8 years after that referendum, we've got a Prime Minister actively negotiating to hand substantial chunks of that control right back. It's like watching someone escape from prison, taste freedom for a few years, then voluntarily walk back through the gates because the food was marginally better inside. Farage argues, with considerable force, that this represents a fundamental betrayal of the Brexit vote and the promises made to the British people. And here's the uncomfortable truth that even Starmer supporters might struggle with. He's not entirely wrong. Whatever your views on Brexit, whatever your thoughts on the European Union, there was a democratic decision made. People voted. Leave won. Part of what Leave promised was sovereignty over decisions like this. If you're now going to hand that sovereignty back, particularly on something as crucial as energy policy, you'd better have an extraordinarily compelling reason and probably another referendum to authorize it. The government's response to all this fury has been, shall we say, underwhelming. A Cabinet Office spokesperson trotted out the standard line that agreed text exchange between the EU and UK would form the basis for further talks in 2026. They insisted that closer cooperation on electricity will bring real benefits to British businesses and consumers, helping to drive down energy costs, strengthen energy security, and drive investment in the North Sea. Then they added that delightfully evasive phrase, "We will not give a running commentary on ongoing talks." Translation: we know this is politically toxic, so we're going to say as little as possible and hope everyone forgets about it by next week. But here's what makes this entire situation so utterly maddening for regular people trying to keep the lights on and the house warm. Nobody is actually asking whether this is what British voters want. There's been no referendum. There's been no election fought on this specific issue. Labour's manifesto mentioned closer cooperation with Europe, sure, but it certainly didn't say we're planning to double our renewable energy targets and subordinate our energy policy to Brussels' jurisdiction. That's the sort of detail that might have come up during the campaign if they'd been honest about it. And the timing couldn't be worse. Britain is already struggling with eye-watering energy costs that have pushed millions into fuel poverty. Businesses are closing or relocating because they simply cannot afford to operate with energy prices this high. The cost of living crisis is still very much a crisis, not a historical footnote. And into this environment, Starmer wants to commit to targets that energy experts say can only be met through measures that will make everything significantly more expensive. Heat pumps costing thousands, higher fuel prices, forced adoption of electric vehicles before the technology and infrastructure are truly ready. All of this hits working families and small businesses the hardest, whilst wealthy households and large corporations can more easily absorb the costs. There's also the rather awkward question of whether these targets are even achievable in the proposed time frame without causing massive economic disruption. Replacing millions of gas boilers with heat pumps isn't something you can just do overnight. The workforce doesn't exist. The supply chains aren't ready. Many older homes aren't properly insulated for heat pumps to work efficiently. Electric vehicle adoption is growing, certainly, but forcing the pace beyond what's natural creates distortions and resentment. And all of this assumes that renewable energy generation can be scaled up fast enough to meet demand, which is a massive assumption given how long it takes to plan, approve, and build wind farms and solar installations in this country. The broader political implications are explosive. Farage and Reform UK will absolutely hammer Labour over this at every opportunity.